You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those birds! Nerds! Nerds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got some family here.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the REVIEWcast podcast. Joining us is Brian Young.
God, I love being a turtle!
The Turtle Dork.
Who's that stumbling around in the dark? State your business or prepare to get wanged.
And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson.
Quick, suck it before the venom reaches my heart.
Wife Dork.
Fucking Mondays, huh?
And also joining us is Brad Gullickson.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon.
Mouth Dork.
It is a writer's obligation to go to bed angry and to rise up angrier the next day.
And also, and I'm your and I'm your host, Darren Smith.
Warm, warmer, disco.
The Disco Dork. Adios. And welcome to the REVIEWcast podcast. Yay! Full disclosure, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually our third take attempting to get this episode done. So if we do some snickering and stuff like that, it's probably because we're laughing at an inside joke relating to the other two failed attempts.
Things
to
are
get this
not
episode
going
recorded.
smoothly. Generally, this is like a well-oiled machine.
We should also note that Brian's third weekend dork was great.
Yes.
So you've got a lot to live up to, sir.
So if you hear a little bit of low energy, just know that I've done this twice before.
No excuse.
Meanwhile, I've just been building up anticipation for doing my weekend dork.
Yeah, exactly. This is the trouble of going first.
All right. Like I never asked you this question before. Brian, how was your weekend dork?
It was pretty good.
Yeah?
It was pretty good. Yeah. I saw Uncle Drew.
What?
And on a scale from 1 to Space Jam, it was about a -2 Space Jam.
Oh.
Beat you to the punch, Brad.
Did you?
Man, I wish I knew someone who had a digital copy of Space Jam.
Oh, and I do have a digital copy. Gosh,
Oh,
Lisa, how did you know?
I don't know.
Haven't you seen Groundhog's Day, Brian, and Happy Death? After so many times, you're supposed to like start anticipating these things that are going to happen. You've seen Edge of Tomorrow. You're supposed to be like badass Tom Cruise by now.
This is like the video gaming of podcasts.
Yeah. So you should know this by now. Speed
Absolutely.
run through your weekend dork. Go,
Yes,
Uncle Drew.
Okay, Uncle Drew.
Bing.
I liked the characters. Chris
Bing.
Webber, Reggie
Bing.
Miller,
Bing.
Nate Robinson, Shaquille O'Neal, Kyrie Irving. I like the chemistry between all the characters. The comedy doesn't work.
This isn't like, slow down. This is only my first time hearing this shit.
I know. I'm sorry. For the listeners, I know this is your first time listening. So don't mind us. Believe me. If you got a peek behind the curtain, it would be
Right.
kind of hilarious.
Right. Uncle Drew, I was looking forward to it.
Yes.
Tiffany Haddish. We love Tiffany
Well,
Haddish.
okay, let me tell you a little bit about the comedy. The comedy for me doesn't work. I feel their performances are a little too broad. It seems aimed at kids. The comedy is very. It's not smart. It's not clever.
Just like dumb kids.
You said it. I didn't.
I said it. Stupid children.
But regardless of that, I found the film to be really endearing. I like the message that the movie had. I like watching a lot of these former athletes on screen together. Being a basketball fan, it was a lot of fun seeing these characters together. I thought a lot of the basketball scenes were really fun to watch, especially the scenes in Rucker Park when you're seeing them play against a lot of other teams in the tournament. I think I enjoyed watching it, but I understand if you're not a sports fan or if you're just not a fan of this type of material, I would steer people probably away from this. You're definitely not going to really get your money's worth.
How about the makeup on a scale of Vampire in Brooklyn to Coming to America? Where does it?
It's funny you mentioned that because there's a scene in the beginning of the film that's in a barbershop, and I thought of Coming to America because they got JB Smoove is in there with makeup on, old man makeup. And Mike Epps Epps is in there where he doesn't even look like he has old man makeup. It's just like they grade his beard.
No, that's not. They didn't grade his beard. His beard is just like that. Mike Epps is just getting up there. He does a great old man, like in his comedy routine.
Yeah. So, I thought about that when I was watching it, and I didn't expect the makeup to be great. Actually, I thought they may purposely try to make it a little noticeable,
of course,
to kind of make it kind of be in on the joke on it. But I actually thought it was actually pretty good. I mean, I thought it was decent. Probably in the middle between Vampire, probably closer to Vampire than Coming to America.
Actually, I think both are actually pretty good. I said Vampire in Brooklyn to
honestly,
Coming to America.
I've never seen Vampire in Brooklyn.
Oh,
I've seen the trailer, so I know about the makeup.
I actually like that movie. It's
Really?
not like great, but it has its moments, and there's actually some really wonderful makeup because it comes after Coming
Ernest
to America.
Dickerson direct that?
No, Wes Craven, and Rick Baker does the makeup for both films.
Oh, he does. Okay, Rick Baker. Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, I don't know who did the makeup for Uncle Drew, but
Rick Baker.
It wasn't Rick Baker. I could definitely attest to that. But yeah, I mean, it was okay. It was okay. Like, I wouldn't give it a negative review, but I'm not going to praise the film either. It was just a disposable film. We talk about that a lot. For films, just it's what do I say? Well, I don't really say it, but empty calories. They don't add anything to anything. It's just fun to watch after you leave the theater.
You should make that your catchphrase, though.
Yeah.
That could be like, did I do that?
Whoa.
My Urkel's on point, guys.
Yeah.
That's round one comedy for you. We didn't get to that level of Brad humor until just now. So you're welcome, listeners.
There you go.
I'm still firing
There
on
you
all
go.
cylinders.
But yeah, I guess I give it a middle of the road, but I had fun watching it. So yeah, Uncle Drew.
I also saw Uncle Drew, and I laughed a few times, but I just felt like the comedy was really derivative, and then the story. I mean, it's essentially a road trip / tournament movie. There's a tournament upcoming, looming on the horizon, and you have a week to do whatever, get to that tournament, round up your team and get to the tournament, or whatever. Mend the relationship by the tournament. It's that movie, except it doesn't even do that really good. And then the comedy, like Brian was saying, for me, I found really generic. They went for like easy jokes and jokes that weren't that funny. But all of the athletes, Chris Webber and Reggie Miller and Shaq and Kyrie Irving, and even Boots.
Nate Robinson.
Even Nate Robinson, they were all great. Like, when they're on screen and when they're interacting with each other, and like their chemistry and camaraderie, and even when they're doing their old man shtick. And like I said, Chris Webber, he was the standout out of all of them. His old man was, not even his impression, I'm doing air quotes, impression of an old man, but his character, like what Chris Webber ended up using to create that character and his relationship with because he's a preacher and he has his church wife, and she doesn't agree with him going to this tournament. So like, all right, guys, I'm gonna tag along for one last ride, but hurry up, my wife's coming. And like, she's like chasing after him, driving mad, and then they get away. But then like later on in the movie, there's a moment where he's just peering out the window, and Lil Rel's character Dax is like, "Hey, everybody, you all right, Preach?" And he's like, "Yeah, just missing my wife." And it's just a character moment, just to show that all this crazy shit just happened. A couple of scenes, or an action scene or comedy scene happened, but just to show that after all this stuff, like, this guy is still back here thinking about his wife. And he plays that scene. He pulls that scene off. It's really short, it's really quick. But Chris Webber pulls it off, and that's
he's really good in it, and even just buying into that relationship with Lisa Leslie, when she actually turns, has that turn in the film, and actually comes on board, seeing the two of them together, even when they're playing on court, they have like the little romantic gestures, and I thought it was really, really nice and sweet that you see between the two of them. So I thought they were probably the standouts in the film. But yeah, the chemistry between all of them. I mean, the whole thing with Nate Robinson not being able to talk and, you know, getting the shoes to get him out the wheelchair, and then the whole thing with his granddaughter. Like it has some really nice little sweet character moments between a lot of the characters. And I like how they stayed consistent with the characters. Like, you know, you would see them like always walking like old men, and you know, you never felt that they were breaking character, and I thought that was really cool. So it was directed by Charles Stone III. I've seen his name somewhere else before. I don't know what else.
His name sounds familiar, but whatever movie is going to pop up at the top of that IMDb list, I guarantee you it's going to be one of
Drumline. I like Drumline. I like Drumline. That's right. I like the last 20 minutes, like
of Drummond.
Of Drumline.
Of Drummond.
Drumline.
Drummond. I misspoke before. I went to the IMDb. I did double check. Rick Baker did not work on Vampire in Brooklyn. It was actually K&B. Rick Baker did Coming to America. So
okay.
But both are excellent from the makeup standpoint.
All right, that's all you got for your weekend, Dork?
Yeah.
We got through it, guys.
Yes, we made it.
Jeez. All right, wife Dork.
Yes.
Did you have a weekend, Dork?
I had a fantastic weekend, Dork.
Okay.
Thank you so much for asking.
How was it?
Speaking of Coming to America, we kicked off our weekend, Dork, Brad and I, seeing the Coming to America movie party at the Alamo Draft House in Ashburn. Oh, we have presents. So, of course, with the movie parties, they always have, like, little props and stuff. So we all had we had Zamunda flags, and every time you saw the flag of Zamunda, you would wave your flag.
Yeah.
We got little things of Soul Glow. Oop, Brad's tripping over shit. Little spray bottles of Soul Glow. What were the other props? I can't remember. It wasn't a lot.
Wait, look, here you go.
Yeah. Oh, and so we have Zamunda flags for you guys.
That's freaking awesome.
Soul Glow for both of you. I'd sing the Soul Glow song.
I have hair to actually use this on too.
Yes.
And I'm gonna sit on your couch and put a nice grease
Oh,
spot on it. No,
it's okay. It's an IKEA couch.
I'm
Do whatever you
Darren.
want.
He was Daryl.
Yeah, very
That's
close.
good.
Very close.
That's good. So that was super fun. Fun crowd, lively crowd for a movie party.
Yeah.
Yeah, way into it. You
Which
know,
is
since the Alamo has had to legally change the quote along to the movie party because the studios didn't want to have the quotes on the screen.
Is that what happened?
Right. It hasn't been as fun because depending on what movie you go to, crowds don't really know the lines. They knew the lines for Coming to America.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Randy Watson.
Yeah, it was really fun. So that was our Monday. And then Wednesday just so happened to be our Brad and I, Mouth Dork and I's 9th wedding anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
9 years of being the wife Dork.
I'm staying.
To this husband Dork.
I'm keeping you.
Oh, that's so sweet. You have to re-up every 9 years. I don't know if you guys know that about marriage. You reach 9 years, you got re-up.
Like a driver's license?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
New photo.
And so
I'm sorry about all my weight gain, Lisa.
it's okay. So for our anniversary, we decided to see a show in DC. We saw Middleditch and Schwartz. So it was Thomas Middleditch from what is he on? Silicon Valley. He's in Tag now. Like for me, I know Thomas.
Is he the skinny guy with the curly
hair?
hair?
He has the curly hair and like the kind of like wide, sad eyes. He looks like a not saggy beagle, like just sad eyes. I know him mostly from going on to the You Made It Weird podcast with Pete Holmes and revealing way too much personal shit. It gets really weird, that episode. I wonder if you can still find it because he did that episode way before he did anything. And then Ben Schwartz, who you guys know I completely adore. I think he is so funny. He is now Leonardo in the new Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
What?
He is in DuckTales. He's doing a ton of voiceovers.
DuckTales?
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
wow.
Dewey.
He'll be at Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, because they got the Turtles has a panel. He's going to be there.
He's on House of Lies.
Yep.
And I got a T-shirt online because every once in a while Facebook will be like, buy this T-shirt. We're not scamming you. And I'm like, I'm sure you're not. Click, and I buy it. And
then the Russians go, whoa.
So I bought a Ben Schwartz T-shirt with him like howling at the moon, and then people are like quoting that TV show at me, but I'm like, I've never watched the show. I think of Ben Schwartz as just my favorite guest on Comedy Bang Bang. He and Scott Aukerman will do like 2-person shows where they just kind of improv and make jokes and sing at each other for like an hour, and it's like Christmas. I love it so much. It's so funny. Yeah. So we got tickets to see Sold Out show, Middleditch and Schwartz at 6 and I. But since it was an anniversary, we had to have a special anniversary dinner. So we decided to try out Dangerously Delicious Pies. Because of all of my Great British Bake Off baking, my next phase is pastry. And so I was in like a pie mood. I want some pastry. So we were following the GPS to Dangerously Delicious Pies, and Brad was like doing this thing of like, why is it asking me to, exit onto Independence Avenue? And then he follows the GPS, and immediately he's like, no! And a place that was 20 minutes away was all of a sudden like 45 minutes away.
Because
and then
GPS doesn't realize that at a certain time they shut down certain streets in DC.
So all of the roads changed direction and blah blah blah. Yeah. Just complete bullshit.
So did you get a text or email like as you pulling into the lot that they were closed or some shit?
Oh no.
Good.
So, but we had some delicious pies. What I'm saying,
okay,
but because it took us so long to get to the pie, we were running a little bit late. Not late to the show, but it's a sold out show. 6 and I is only general admission. I might just be getting too fucking old for general admission shows. Because you got to show up early to get a good seat. And 6th and I is actually a synagogue. So it's kind of square. It's square shaped with like 2 tiers. There's like the floor and then there's a tier. And so the floor was completely full. So we had to go up to the tier. But if you're on the sides in the top of the back tier, you literally cannot see the stage at all. Unless
so when
you're like
Lisa says we saw Middleditch and Schwartz,
it was an audio experience.
Yeah.
So so we couldn't really see. I could kind of see when I stood up on the chair. So it was a bad situation. But what they're doing is they're doing an hour of. Actually, this was kind of the end of the tour, I think. I don't know if they're doing more shows, but you guys can look it up. They're doing an hour of long form improv, which generally I'm not an improv fan, but I just love these 2 dudes so much. So like they were like, okay, we're just gonna get one like idea from the audience, and that's going to be the idea for the entire improv. So their like kind of kickoff was like, okay, somebody yell out a secret that they feel like they have to tell someone, but they can't. And so a woman stood up and she's like, I want to quit my band. And so they asked a few follow-up questions, and they did this entire improv about like a 1 hour 2-person play with multiple characters. They're switching multiple characters and stuff about these 4 guys like breaking up the band. Like because they're too old, and there's like a car crash and a secret gnome guy who brings Rory back to life by kissing lightly the tip of his dick. It was magical. But the sad thing was, so like, the sound system also wasn't the best. So like I could enjoy the show and hear everything and see maybe a third of everything.
I heard mumbles.
But Brad's old man ears couldn't hear shit. So he was just sitting down, like, just getting in his own thoughts, getting mad about something.
Yeah,
That's how you
staring into the void.
They didn't have a screen, like...
No.
No. It's like not a huge venue.
The acoustics in there, for a synagogue are pretty terrible in my opinion.
How many people would you say were there? Like 700 people?
Up top, there was 428 max capacity, so I'd say it was about 400 people up with us.
Yeah. But, like, to me, I had a wonderful
know that because
time.
I sat by the max capacity sign and I stared at it.
You did.
For entertainment purposes.
But, this is the worst. So, apparently on their entire tour, they've been saving 2 seats for Daniel Day-Lewis. And they keep hoping that just Daniel Day-Lewis will hear about it and show up. So the entire time, like, we're watching this show where we can't see, there are 2 seats taped off for
Primo seats.
Daniel Day-Lewis, who's not coming to the show.
Oh, and you could have had
I should have just
those could have been our
I'll
seats.
drink your milkshake. And taking those taking those seats.
I'm sad that Brad couldn't hear or see anything, but I had a wonderful time. The crowd was really laughing it up, and I cherish the opportunity.
That's my left foot.
To see Ben Schwartz in person, kind of. Oh. He was mostly on our side of the stage, which meant that most of the time I was just looking at Thomas Middleditch. Oh. But it was still fun.
That's good.
Still fun, and then we saw Sicario.
It was an experience then.
Yeah.
All right.
So that was my weekend dork.
All right, Brad.
Those pies were crazy.
They were so good.
So
so they have a date night special where you can get 2 beers, 2 savory pies, 2 sweet pies for $32.
Like a slice, not a whole pie.
Yeah. A slice of pie.
What was the 2 types? You said savory and what?
Two, like a slice of savory pie,
and
then 2 slices of sweet pie.
Okay.
So, like, I got a slice of steak and Gruyere. I think what do they call that one? They have cute names. Yeah. So that one's called the smog. It's steak and Gruyere. Delicious. What did you have for your savory pie, Brad?
Potato and cheese. It was called the hot rod.
He had the hot rod.
There's mushrooms in it. And then for my
really
sweet
good.
pie, I had a key lime slice.
He went key lime. The key lime was delicious. Mm-hmm. I went chocolate peanut butter.
I mean, they were crazy good.
They were super delicious.
The hot rod in particular, I want more.
Yeah. The intention was to share, but Brad was just like, no. All of the cheese and potatoes pie is mine.
You got a bite of my hot rod, and I got a bite of your smog. Mine was superior. Back off.
Oh.
But yeah.
Marriage, 9 years.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, and it came with a little side salad with a vinaigrette, balsamic vinaigrette.
I ate that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, so it was good. I recommend Dangerously Delicious Pies, and I do recommend seeing Middleditch and Schwartz if they ever decide to tour again. Just show up early, because those fans are rabid.
Okay. All right, B, how was your week in dork?
The day after our wedding anniversary, Harlan Ellison died.
That's right.
That happened. He was 84, I want to say. I might be wrong, but in his 80s. And he had a stroke 3 years previously, and the stroke had pretty much left him bedridden for the past 3 years. And, I know that was a miserable living situation. So I'm glad that his pain and suffering is over.
Yeah.
And Ellison, is a dude who left a huge mark on our culture, and he certainly left a massive impact on my life, in particular in my high school years. He was the guy who... So I came to him through the Sci-Fi Channel. Back in the 90s, the Sci-Fi Channel had this really abysmal Entertainment Tonight-like show called Sci-Fi Buzz. And it could be so aggravating to watch. But at the end of every episode, they would have Harlan Ellison's watching. And it was a commentary corner for the author. And he would get up and he would rant and rave about whatever.
Yeah.
The first episode I ever saw of him, it was episode 8 of Harlan Ellison's watching. And he was talking about a lecture he gave at Stony Brook University where he referenced Doc Howe, and a student during the Q&A said, "Excuse me, I don't know the reference. I don't understand. Who is Doc Howe?" And he was disgusted, and he, went into a tirade about, Nazi concentration camps and how these places of absolute evil should be living in infamy, and we should all know our history. And if we expect to be quality writers and quality contributors to our society, we need to know our history.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when I watched that, I didn't know what Dachau was, and that sent me down a path of learning more than just Auschwitz and Nazis are bad and they're the bad guys from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And I was really hooked by just how goddamn angry Harlan Ellison was in these 3 minutes. And that sent me looking for his writing. And, I bought his collections, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, and Strange Wine, and The Beast That Shouted Love into the Heart of the World. And eventually I got to his collection, Deathbird Stories. And that collection, just changed my mind. We've talked about way back when we did a Fistful of Influences, and we talked about these are the movies that steered our taste to this point.
Yeah.
And I talked about how when I watched Reservoir Dogs taught me that dialogue could be as exciting as the Death Star blowing up.
Yeah.
Reading The Deathbird, the final story of the Deathbird stories, was that for literature. You know, that's a story about a guy who wakes up and he doesn't recognize the earth around him. He's being escorted by this snake to this mountain, and it's this apocalyptic vision. But in the course of this journey, he's also the story also cuts to a teacher giving a test, and you have to answer questions like, what is the meaning of love? A, B, D, C, D. And then you would have like an essay in the middle of the short story about Ellison having to put down his dog when the dog got stomach cancer. And then at the end of this story, all these things, the test, the essay, they all coalesce into this climax that totally makes sense, even though while you're on the journey and all this format playing is occurring, you're struggling with the understanding of it. And so like Ellison, his writing was unlike anybody else. His lectures, his commentary, his Harlan Ellison's watching was an amazing gateway for, social change, social conversation, but also he was a massive celebrator of other writers, other movies. Actually, Lisa, this morning I was watching Harlan Ellison's watching on YouTube, and you can see every episode there right now on his channel, all 60 episodes. I've watched 32 in the last 48 hours. And I was watching an episode where he is lamenting the loss of Quantum Leap.
Oh, no way.
And he was a massive Quantum Leap fan, but he didn't come to Quantum Leap until he was on the Sci-Fi Channel. And he came to it like in the last season. And in watching the last season, he started going back and watching Quantum Leap episodes and just cherishing what a great show this is. And then he was encouraging his watchers to go check this show out in syndication.
That's cool.
And people like Alfred Bester and Julie Schwartz and Ray Bradbury. I mean, he was a champion of the arts of people that he respected. And he was also, quick to tear down anything he thought was despicable. There's an episode where he just lambasts Tommy Boy and Chris Farley and David Spade, there's an episode where he's furious at DC Comics and Marvel Comics because they've allowed this video game ad that is selling a light gun for a video game. It looks like a .44 Magnum, and he was just infuriated that you'd be selling guns to children in these video games and stuff like that. And Ellison has this reputation as being a tyrant, and he's probably more well known today for having written the greatest Star Trek episode of all time, The City on the Edge of Forever, and hating that episode and believing that Roddenberry and the producers of Star Trek just absolutely butchered his script. And IDW Comics a few years ago they got his original script and they did it to his specifications, and he finally got to see his version of City on the Edge of Forever in print, at least. And he's known for, being a Sue Happy champion of creator rights. He went after James Cameron for the Terminator because he believed that Cameron stole massive elements of that film from his Outer Limits episodes, Soldier and Demon with a Glass Hand. And actually, last night I watched Soldier, and it does open like in the future Armageddon hellscape, sort of like the way the Terminator opens, or Terminator 2 opens. And it's about a soldier from the future going back in time and not understanding the world that he currently has. I see elements, yes, from Soldier. I see elements, yes, from Demon with a Glass Hand. But I also feel like Cameron just was, he was doing what all artists do, robbing from everywhere to create his own thing. And I don't know if I would have been as Sue Happy as Harlan Ellison was in that case, or in a lot of other cases. But I respect him for being that bulldog also. there's a documentary that Lisa and I saw a few years ago. I watched it last night, called Dreams with Sharp Teeth, about Harlan Ellison's life. And if you're curious about the guy, I would encourage you to watch the documentary. It shows him in all his colors.
Is it a good doc?
Yeah, it's a good doc. You know, it's a doc like any other film that's there to champion a person, right? You know, it's the person making it obviously has a lot of love for Ellison.
But at the same time, you see that Ellison is like this complete bastard and a hard person to be friends with. But really what stood out to me from that documentary was his totally sweet and beautiful relationship with his fifth wife and final wife, Susan.
They were married in 1986, and they were together until his death.
And it was really just a matter of him finding someone who could tolerate his idiosyncrasies and selfishness and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I read a short story that he wrote this morning, a real small snippet, and the story is entitled Susan, named after his wife. And it's a story of this guy who, when he dreams, his nightmares become a reality, and they murdered his previous 4 wives. So he now has to sleep away from his house out in this wooded area. And his wife tends to him before she goes to bed and then leaves him be. They have a wonderful relationship, but he goes off and he sleeps alone, and then he returns in the morning, his dreams having never eaten her. So I was like, there's a lot of interesting psychology going on there that is fascinating, and I appreciate it, and the words are great. But, Ellison was a particular beast. But in that documentary, Dreams with Sharp Teeth, Neil Gaiman is talking about Ellison, and he says, look, you have to recognize that he is 2 things. He is one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, and he is also a 12-year-old boy, a furious, impish child. And he is this whole. It's not that he is good or bad. He is just this. And you either accept him or you don't.
Yeah.
I've obviously had like a very complicated relationship with the man, but I cannot deny that his fiction and those early rantings that I saw on Sci-Fi Buzz had a hand in steering me to this podcast today. And so, Ellison, he was a raging atheist. So, he wouldn't want me to say, I hope he's happy somewhere. But you left an impact, sir. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. All right. That's it for your weekend, Dork?
Yeah, that's it.
I remember from the documentary, like somebody just casually uses the word awesome, and then Ellison just rips him to shreds.
Yeah.
Because he's like, do you know what awesome even means? Awesome means like the awe of God. Are you feeling the awe of God over your latte? It was like devastating. He's the kind of hero you'd never want to fucking meet.
But here's the thing, like Ellison's also a guy who has the same jokes, right? The same routines. That awesome joke, if you can call it that joke, that awesome rant, he's used many times. I've heard him respond that way to people saying the word awesome multiple occurrences.
Oh my God, exhausting.
Yeah.
He's that guy.
He is that guy.
All right.
Or was that guy.
Okay. For Mike Weekend Dork, I had a pretty eventful Weekend Dork. On the night of your anniversary excursion, I was at the Alamo Draft House in Loudon for for a film club screening of a restoration of the 80s cult classic Extra. Shout out to Alamo Film Club and Brian Lloyd, the programmer at Loudon. And everyone who showed up and came out for that movie. There were quite a bit of people. You would have been proud, B. There were quite a few people in that audience.
I've seen the photo.
Who have not seen the film.
Oh, cool.
So that was the main appeal for me. Well, firstly, because I haven't seen it since I was a kid. Secondly, it was a restoration. But more importantly, especially once I got there, the big draw for me became everyone who raised their hand, being mindful of their response to the movie. And it is one of those films. It's one of those films that once you've seen it, your goal in life, your main goal in life now is to watch other people watch this movie, right? And so we've talked about it because you caught a screening of it not too long ago.
No, I've never seen it on the
right?
big screen, but we talked about it. It came out on Blu-ray.
That's what it was.
And then I think we actually also talked about when it finally came out on DVD. It took a long time to become available. Right. I first caught this as a VHS copy from Power Video in Chantilly, Virginia.
Okay, so you would have been thrilled because the transfer for this movie was immaculate. It was amazing. It was beautiful. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But I could talk about that, the experience of watching that movie and the bonkers piece of celluloid that it is for hours. But what I really want to talk about, and it's not contrary to what you might think, B, it is not to rub it in your face.
Well, hold on. Before you leave Extra,
okay,
you came away from Extra not necessarily enjoying it as much as I enjoy it.
Not in the way that you enjoy it. I can appreciate. It's one of those movies. It's like it's like the experience of watching it is the equivalent to watching something like Roar. When you're watching in this and you're just like you're cognitive of the fact that it takes a bunch of different minds to come together to make a movie, a bunch of ideas, a bunch of should we or shouldn't we? Yes, we should. No, all roads led to this thing being created. And this, you watch that movie, it's the same way when you watch Roar and you go, how did this get made? How did this get made for Extra?
There's not.
Are you serious?
There will be now. I guarantee it. Now that there is a Blu-ray, it's got to happen.
It has to happen. That is the perfect movie.
Everybody start tweeting Jason Mantzoukas and Paul Scheer ASAP.
I'm gonna be a part of that movement. It's the perfect film for that. So I came away from that movie enjoying and appreciating what that was, loving what it did to the audience because it just blew their minds. But at the end of the day, for me, it wasn't one of those movies that I saw as a kid and then went back to revisit and found a whole bunch of nostalgic worth in it that made me put up with maybe some bad acting or shitty special effects. Like there are movies that I can go back and appreciate on that level, but this one though, like the music, the score was it was piercing. Like it was just horrible. I don't know, but I can appreciate because Brian gave a pretty interesting intro regarding what that film was, what the aim of that film, what it was trying to be at the time of its production, and in regards to like the nasties of Europe and stuff like that. And so I mean I can appreciate what it was doing. And just the ingenuity of the stuff that's involved.
Yeah,
I mean,
the weirdness.
It's a kitchen sink movie. They will throw all these different concepts and everything there, and sometimes it doesn't even feel like they're concerned with what's sticking or not. It's just it's here, so just throw it. Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, there are people who can appreciate it on that level. Brad, obviously, you're one of them, and our audience was filled with a bunch of those people, and so luckily they had a really good time with it. And ultimately, in spite of my feelings toward the actual film itself, like I had a great time watching it. Faye showed up. Shout out to Faye and Psycho Cinema. She showed up there and we chit-chatted. We talked some future It My business, and so be on the lookout for that.
Oh man! By the way, I got stuff to talk to you about, you guys, after that.
Secrets. But that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about another screening that I went to, minus my.
Is this the humble brag section?
This is the humble brag section. I didn't have this bee by my side, but fortunately I had this bee by my side.
Pointing on podcasts is just the best.
Yeah, you just have to imagine with your minds. Brian was in attendance. The AFI, as a part of their Color and Conversation, the Color of Conversation film festival that they have going on, which is to include projects, whether it be documentaries, short films, or feature films from different ethnic and diverse backgrounds, people of color and things like that. And so one of the main screenings at this festival was an advanced screening of Sorry to Bother You, also with director and writer Boots Riley in attendance for a Q&A after the film. And so I'm not going to go into the movie. I'm not going to go into detail about specifics about the movie because it's a film that, Brad, you definitely have to see it.
That's no doubt.
You're going to definitely have strong feelings for this movie. Lisa, I am so curious to the conversation that we're gonna have regarding the film, regarding Tessa Thompson's role in the film, even regarding Lakeith Stanfield and what just all of the messages and the not even messages. There are, and Boots Riley would say this in the Q&A. He isn't so much as concerned about putting a specific message in the film as he is just his worldview. So as someone who grew up in Oakland, Boots Riley, for a lot of people who may be unaware, he was a part of a hip hop group in the 90s called The Coup. And that's my first experience with him. I remember him, his big afro, his sideburns, the same afro and sideburns that he has now, he rocked back in like 92. And there was this video that would come on the jukebox. The Jukebox Network was that network, that channel you turn to, channel 19 on cable, and you can call in a phone number and have them play a music video for you, and it costs $2. So like, so they would play his video like regularly. But that was like the only song he had on the East Coast. He was really big on the West, but not so much on the East. But I remember his video. So fast forward to seeing the trailer for Sorry to Bother You. At the end of the teaser, they show a film by Boots Riley, and it didn't click to me that that's who that was. At first, I told Brian this. I thought that was a female, and I was like, oh, wow, this movie looks great, and a female director. Okay, like I'm down. I'm double game. And then I can't remember how I came to that it was, Boots Riley and the group The Coup were one and the same. But once I found that out, I became extra intrigued from this hip-hop guy to the director of this movie that I'm seeing this trailer for. But and I was telling Brian this, it makes sense because his music in the 90s was, one could say, like politically charged. Not so much in the vein of Chuck D or Public Enemy, but I mean, he was speaking about not your typical LA 90s music, West Coast gangbang, gangster rap, because NWA was big coming up at that time. But not that type. More of a laid back vibe, but a vibe that, all right, if you're laying back and you're chilling and you're drinking with your homies and you're relaxing, this is the mood. But check this out. This is what I got to say about what I see in society. And so he was still putting these things, these different layers outside of just entertainment and pop, snapping your fingers, dancing type music. There's still some substance in his music. So when it just makes sense once you see Sorry to Bother You, that's that guy. Like, he didn't lose that. And so, if anything, his whole life has just been using any platform, whether it be music or whether it be directing, to talk about and express his worldview. And it's a worldview that, coincidentally, similar people we would, I myself may share on some of the things that are in this film. Actually, almost all of the things. So it's a worldview that is infinitely relatable and really relevant to right now. So I don't want to get into the movie because that's going to be a review cast.
Yeah,
no doubt,
nice.
No doubt, because it warrants a long discussion. But what I do want to talk.
When does it come out?
This weekend.
The 6th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about it at length then. So I'm not going to get into specifics of that, but I do want to say this. Though I see the trailer, and if you've seen the trailer, the hook of the trailer is, and what one would think would be the hook of this film is, Lakeith Stanfield plays a young black guy who lives in California. It's his Oakland, and he's just trying to make ends meet, and he gets a job as a telemarketer, and he's working there. He's not doing too good. In the trailer, you see Danny Glover's character sitting next to him, laughing at him, saying, "Look, young blood, you're doing it all wrong. If you want to be successful in this, you got to use your white voice." And then the hook of the film is they have a white actor dub Lakeith Stanfield. David Cross dubs him as his quote-unquote white voice. I'm doing air quotes. And once he starts using this white voice, he skyrockets in status in the company, and he goes to the top. You want to be a power caller. That's what they say in the trailer. You want to be a power caller. You want to climb the ladder of success. Now, do you leave? Do you sacrifice your morals, and do you hold true to your scruples and the people around you, or do you say, forget all that, I'm trying to get success? So that's in the trailer, right? But the movie is so much more than that, so much so that surprisingly, I found that the whole talking white thing in order to succeed, that's not even a main. It's just it goes to what Boots Riley was saying at that Q&A. It's not a message. I'm not putting this in the movie to say, okay, this is what's going on in the world. This is what we're going to talk about. Like I said before, this is just an observation. There's an observation that, it's in some circles you have to use a white voice. You have to. It's your presence is what people perceive or whatever. And so, like that element that is put in the film to ruminate and you do with you will. I mean, it serves a purpose because it gets Lakeith Stanfield from where he starts out to where he's ultimately going to go and make some other character decisions to complete his character arc. So it has a purpose in the story, but it's not all that movie's about, right? And so then when this other element is introduced that comes out of left field, you know, it's some more observations of Boots Riley. So this is also what's going on, or what I see going on in society. As a matter of fact, here's something else that I've observed in society. So these different elements come into play, but they all coalesce like organically, and it doesn't feel like he's throwing everything to see what sticks. It feels extremely focused, even though there are many layers to the film and to the subject matter and to the themes. But what I wanted to say and what I wanted to talk about was the whole idea of the talking white thing, right? Even in the Q&A, like no one really brought it up except, you know, how did you go about choosing the actors of Patton Oswalt? Because Patton Oswalt does the voice for Omari Hardwick, his character, the guy you see with the bowler hat and the eye patch.
Steve Buscemi too.
Steve Buscemi does Danny Glover, voice. And there's a cameo by Forrest Whitaker somewhere, but I'm gonna just leave it at that. And so, but anyway, but they never really talk about that idea in the movie. And I remember when this teaser first came out, I said, you know what, I want to watch the movie first, but I have something to say about that if this is what the film is about. Fortunately, is about a lot more than that. But anyway, like the idea of feeling like you have to change who you are to get the acceptance of others. It's something that I've done on this podcast for almost 4 years. And by that, I mean, I don't mean like my personality, like as far as how I'm always laughing, like that's Darren in real life. Brian will tell you that. Like I just laugh all the time. I love laughing. It's like my favorite thing to do. Genuinely. I love it. If you can't tell already. I love when I get excited, I talk a lot, I talk fast, and like I'm channel surfing as I'm thinking. Like that's all me. So but the one thing that I do change for the podcast is how I speak. Brian can tell you, like when Brian and I are talking, I talk totally different. I speak in a more relaxed voice. I use a totally different type of vernacular and slang when I'm talking with Brian. And a part of me felt like, and this was something that I thought about, like when I first agreed to do the podcast, I felt like, okay, well, if we're going to reach a large audience and they're going to be people who, like, if it's going to be a large white audience, then I feel like in order for me to either have the podcast be accepted or not bring it down, or either for me to be accepted as a person or a personality on the podcast, I have to adjust the way I talk. And it's something that I never felt like conflicted. There was no time when I was at home going, man, should I do this, or am I staying true to myself, or am I selling out, or what? That conversation, it's something I have to do. There's no conversation. It's second nature. All right, well, once you get on the podcast, you have to talk a certain way. You have to enunciate everything. You just can't talk in your relaxed. I can't use my black voice, and that's the thing that society is programmed into me. And I mean, I could be wrong in saying this, but Brian, I'm pretty sure like I
do the same thing.
You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, I really don't want that aspect of this film to be glossed over by people who see it, because it's something that I don't think a lot of people realize and think about. I think the people who hear me talk the way that I do on the podcast, and I talk this way at work too, because I have certain people around me who subconsciously, I think, and sometimes maybe consciously, I think that I have to present myself a certain way. And part of it is because, so when I'm with Brian, or when I'm with the homies or wherever, I talk, I use slang and stuff like that because that's Brian knows who I am. My homies know who I am. They know Brian knows that I'm as smart as I am, even if I'm talking with not perfect English or whatever. So Brian knows, so I don't have to worry about that. But when I'm in society, when I'm at my job, I have to worry about, well, I don't want to come across as a person of color who doesn't have a particular level of intellect.
And how other people will perceive that,
And how people perceive that. So I have to put on a good face so that I am a good example. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but this is something that I'm cognitive of every day, especially when I go to work. I don't want the people at my job, and in full disclosure, I don't want the white people at my job to see me and think that, I don't want to perpetuate the stereotype of someone of color who's not intelligent or someone who's not literate or someone who doesn't have an extensive vocabulary. So I tend to show that more when I'm around these people. Now, when I'm around Brian, I don't give a shit. Like Brian, I don't give a shit if Brian thinks what he thinks about my vocabulary. So Brian will tell you, I whittle it down to 5 words. When Brian and I talk, there are 5 words that I use in every conversation. Because I understand that Brian knows that outside of this dialogue that we're having, Darren's a smart person. I would hope you know I'm smart, right?
Yeah. I believe that.
Okay.
Nah, yeah.
All right, but that's a thing that I wanted to bring up, that hopefully, like, when you watch it, but again, because the movie doesn't focus, and it's not even a detriment to the movie. When you see that it's perfect the way it is, and it makes sense. But something I just wanted you and Lisa to think about, because the movie doesn't put it out. Again, it's not trying to preach a message of, hey, this is what black people have to do. We have to worry about like our perceptions and how and it's a thing. It's a heavy burden that Brian has to worry about how you as a white person are going to perceive all black people by your impression of him.
Yeah, experience you had with
and
him.
it's a burden for him what you think about all of people of color, of his people. And so he carries that every day when he walks into a room with people who are of a different ethnicity and have a certain stigma on black people. So Brian feels like, okay, I have to represent, and I have to change how I speak. I have to change my normal everyday demeanor for these people so that they don't think that all black people are ignorant or whatever crazy unjust stereotype that they have. Does that make sense?
I think so. Are you thinking of changing your behavior going forward?
Not my behavior, but
your presentation.
I really the movie has me at a point at a crossroads, so to speak, where I'm looking at and reevaluating my principles. And what am I staying true to? Because this is all in the movie too. Like, what are you staying true to, and why?
Yeah,
and what matters the most? And like, how far should I go? Should I care? Should I let it drive me? And ultimately, what do I want my lasting impression to be to other people without sacrificing who I truly am? You know. And so it's a conversation that I've been thinking about. I've only seen the movie last night. But I've been thinking about it since then, and then again, it's something.
And since the trailer, I remember we didn't get this deep when we first saw the trailer, but we had a
because I wasn't sure if the movie was gonna, and turns out it didn't, and so I'm
Do you wish that it did?
No, because it does so much. It's not because he's not just concerned about again, our problem in the world isn't just because the movie isn't just about the fact that a black man has to change his voice to a white voice to succeed. It's not just about that. It's not even just about racial stuff. There's things in the movie that affect people of all race and of all colors. That that's at the main heart of the story. So I'm not mad at all. I mean, it's just and especially to hear him put it that way, that or he wasn't trying to put messages in the movie. It's just these are his observations. So and it feels like that. And so and this is just an observation that I have. His observation caused me to look inward at my own process. When
I think that's something that, but him, like hearing him talk about that when someone asked him that question, and he was talking about, like, what message are you trying to put across? He's like, look, this is just how I see the world. And I think he's speaking to a lot, like how a lot of, especially minorities and black people in general, feel living in the world that we have to put on a certain type of presentation because we are representing not just ourselves but our entire race. Like you say, I do that at work all the time. I even do that when I do my YouTube videos. You know, I'm thinking like, okay, I have to talk a certain way, you know, or present myself in a certain way so that I can appeal to more people than just, you know, just black people or people, you know what I'm saying? So I have to, like, that's something I'm always conscious of. So I think, and when you see the film, you also see, and it's a funny bit, but Danny Glover explains, like, you know, why you have to put on this white voice, and how to do it, and how to make yourself, like how to present yourself in that way. So it's very interesting. And like I said, I mean, Darren's right. This movie speaks on so many different themes and it's so layered. It's a brilliant film. It's so layered. Like I said, it can feel like it's a little unfocused because he's tackling so many different issues. But at the end of the day, man, it's good. It's good. It's got a weird and absurd vibe to it, but it's so creative in the way that it's directed, the acting, everything about it. It's and like I was telling Darren, it's one of those type of movies, and we'll get into Sicario, and I was talking to Kern and you about this, where this is those type of films that when you watch it, you'll pick up something new every time you see it. Like we talked about that with Vanilla Sky. Like, it's a movie that you'll watch 10 years later, or every single time you watch it, you'll pick up something different and something new. And those are the type of films that stand the test of time. And this feels like one of those films that's going to stand the test of time, because it just has something that you'll find something new that you'll watch every single time you watch it.
It's as far as, because this is his feature debut, and he talks a little bit about the process of being a rapper in Hollywood, trying to get your script read, you know? And you automatically not taken seriously because you were a rapper, right? And he talks about that whole process, but how things fell into place for him and what he ended up creating is one of these strong debut feature films that belongs right next to Get Out, that belongs right next to District 9. I mean, that distinctive of a voice, but also coupled with that much substance within a genre picture. If it like Brian said, it's an absurdist suburban fantasy. And
almost like a fable.
And he said he put that absurdist slant and that type of off-kilter humor in there. He said that was his link to approach, to add some levity to all of the heavy shit that he's talking about. And so it totally helps. Yeah. It totally helps.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like, when you look at the root of all these issues that would cause these type of observations in a film, they're almost always more absurd than anything that you can, fantasize about trying to, bring to something visual on the screen. Like, the truth of our government and why they do shit, it's just freaking insane. Like, we're going to talk about Sicario, the sequel, but like the bureaucracy behind, the inspiration for that film and what the government does. Like, it's some absolutely absurd shit, but it's real life. It's our reality. So this movie, while it has some absurdist like type of humor and tone, you'll see like it's very grounded, especially with the relationship between Lakeith Stanfield and Tessa Thompson.
Yeah,
that sells it, and that you buy into everything else, that all the crazy shit that happens because of their very human and very real relationship. And it feels honest too. And
you need that too, because you're right. It deals with some heavy stuff. It deals with some really heavy issues. So you kind of need that weird slant to it to kind of relieve a little bit of that. But it's a hell of a debut. It's a hell of a debut. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well, I've been finding the trailer has been so provocative and thought-provoking and absurd, and it sounds like the movie exceeds that. So I am beyond curious.
This is the trailer. This is the trailer.
Yeah,
that's the trailer. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm doing I'm putting my index finger and my thumb together.
Ant-Man fingers.
Yeah, this is the trailer. Like,
I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm interested to see what you guys think about it.
I'm so
I'm that discussion I'm very much looking forward to. So anyway, that's my week in Dork, ladies and gentlemen. After the break, we have our review cast for Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado, a sequel to an IDMA favorite. Sicario, directed by Denis Villeneuve, starring Emily Blunt, Daniel Kaluuya, and Josh Brolin. This one, the sequel, stars Benicio del Toro, Josh Brolin, and Catherine Keener.
Matthew Modine.
Shea Wingham makes a cameo. I wish he was in it a lot more. So yeah, we're going to talk about that and get into the nitty gritty south of the border when we return. So stay tuned for that.
Hey, this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
AfterMovieDiner.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. AfterMovieDiner.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for our review cast of Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado. I don't think it needs to be stated that we are huge fans of the first film.
Yeah.
I didn't like the first film.
Oh yeah, Lisa did.
Lisa
yeah,
was a fan.
Yeah. It was,
Why did you like the first film, Lisa? Too sad?
Too entirely too sad.
Too real?
Entirely too sad.
I mean, that's understandable because
I don't like feeling like that. It's yucky.
It's not necessarily a happy ending. The subject matter is not bright and cheery. Anytime you're talking about the cartels.
When that movie ended, you were like, whoa, I need the sequel ASAP. What's happening?
I don't think I said that.
Of course not, because no one wanted a sequel to Sicario.
Except Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah.
Which he comes back to write the sequel for Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado. But instead of Denis Villeneuve in the director's chair, we have, what's his name, Brian?
Stefano Sollima.
That guy.
From the Gomorrah TV show.
Yes. And at first, because Taylor Sheridan was announced to come back and write the sequel, I was excited. Not excited. I felt like, well, at the very least, the story.
You loved the trailer. It was in your top 5 most anticipated films, right?
Oh yeah, I really liked the trailer for the film. So I again, when first it was announced they were doing it and Taylor Sheridan was coming on, I became interested in the pick, and then I saw the trailer for it, and then I got excited for the pick. And now the pick has been released, and we have seen it. I've seen it twice, as a matter of fact. I saw it again earlier today to get some clarity and confirmation on my thoughts on the film. And we'll jump into that when it's my turn.
What was your excitement really like when you saw the trailer? Like, what's the draw of seeing Sicario the Day of the Soldado?
It's Benicio del Toro.
That's right.
And for me, obviously, I can easily be accused of being biased because that's my favorite actor. Mm-hmm. But his presence in the trailer is what hooked me. There's not a lot to go on regarding what the overall film will feel like in the trailer, because I think the trailer did a good job of feeling it felt like it was in the same world of Sicario. Mm-hmm. And once we get to the bad of this episode, I'll talk about how this film, the actual film, does not feel like it is in the same world of the first movie.
Don't jump the gun, man.
All right.
There's good stuff to talk about.
There is, and Brian's going to start it off with his good. We're going to do round robin like we usually do, good, the bad, the ugly of Sicario 2. Brian, you can start us off.
So just like how you were saying, we're all, sans Lisa, loved the first movie. I adored is a good word to describe it.
You loved it.
I loved it. I loved that first movie.
You enjoyed it.
Yes.
You were exhilarated by it.
I think
for all of the feels.
The 3 dudes on this podcast, Sicario landed on all 3 of our top 10s that year.
Yeah, 2015, it was my second favorite film behind Creed. Absolutely loved that film. So I was highly anticipating this movie coming into this year and this summer. So going into this film, looking forward to it. The movie starts off, I really enjoyed the first 10 to 15 minutes of it. I thought the setup of this movie was really, really fantastic. really gripping. Learning the story about, okay, now we're dealing with terrorists. How are the terrorists getting into America? Of course, they're being held by the cartels, getting across the borders. When you see that scene, this is spoiler review, so when you see that, not opening scene, but scene in the beginning when they go to Kansas City and you see 3 of the terrorists go inside that grocery store shopping center and they just start, doing the suicide bombs, exploding that building, and that one scene with the mother with her daughter trying to leave, I just thought was just frightening to watch. So I thought that beginning really just kind of grabs you as an audience member and really just gets you into the story, gets you into the meat of the story about what we're going into. So I thought that was a really, really powerful opening. Performances. Well, we're going to talk about performances. Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro, they're doing basically what they've did in the first film, bringing their A game to this film. The more that could be said about Benicio, the better. I thought all the performances got robbed as far as maybe some awards consideration, because I thought everybody from the 2 of them to Emily Blunt was great in the first movie, so they're really just kind of carrying over a lot of the stuff that we see in the second film. I told you, Darren, Benicio just has those stares that I do not want him looking at me like that. It's just... you put the fear of God in me. Don't look.
I don't want to be in the room of either of these 2 dudes.
No.
Brolin's character or Del Toro's.
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't know. And even though I think I do have some issues with Taylor Sheridan's script, and we'll get to some of the bad, I do like what Salima's doing with some of the choices he makes as a director. I do like the kidnapping scene when they take Isabel, when she gets taken from school.
Yeah, it's solid.
Yeah, it's solid. It's nowhere near some of the stuff that we see with Villeneuve and the way he directs those scenes, especially that scene crossing the border.
Yeah, and the way Deacon shoots it too.
And the way and the cinematography is. We'll talk about that as far as them being missed in this film, which I think that's a glaring omission, having him, Johansson, and Deakins gone from this. I think it's a glaring omission. But I do think Salima does some great stuff with the directing as far as the way he constructs those scenes, the way he uses sound effects, the way he drops the score, just really kind of bring
convoy. What's the word? Ambush. Sabotage, ambush.
Yeah.
Was directed well.
But yeah, I thought that was directed well. Again, I've only seen the movie once, so I'm really trying to pull some of the other good stuff. There's some questionable things I have in the third act, but I think, we'll get to that a little bit later. But, the performances I thought were great. I love that opening scene. And, I was engaged the whole time. But, I guess I could say, if I come up with some other stuff while you guys talk, I'll definitely chime in. But those are probably my good that I could think of off bat.
All right, Lisa, your laundry list of good.
My laundry list of good pretty much begins and ends with the performance of Isabel Moner, who plays Isabel Reyes. She actually was Isabella from Transformers
Last Night, yeah.
The Last Night. And I think that her emotional arc throughout this movie is very subtle, and I feel like she really nails it. She starts out the film as this kind of bratty kid who is being picked on and bullied, but at the same time, her dad is tremendously rich, cartel guy. So she's essentially untouchable. And so she has no control over her life. The school has no control over her, and she's just kind of spiraling. And then there's the kidnapping scene. And you see her try to act very tough from that whole kidnapping sequence. And it's, her eyes and ears are covered. She's disoriented, and she goes from place to place, not sure who the good guys are and the bad guys are, and she doesn't even know if she wants to be with the good guys or the bad guys. Who is going to be safe for her? And she kind of like, there's a lot of similar themes between the original Sicario and this film about the emotional devastation you go through when you are involved with the cartels or involved with like these super intense just violence and the trauma, but not
lifestyle.
that, but like the lifestyle that comes along with being adjacent to this kind of devastation.
I mean, the way that she and the other kid who's growing up Coyote, the way they mirror each other.
Yeah. So after she gets separated from the Americans, from Josh Brolin and that whole group, and she's traveling alone with Alejandro, with Benicio del Toro, the story kind of changes in that, like, you know, you get this sense that maybe Alejandro is somehow getting like emotionally attached to Isabella, like wanting to protect her because she's a child, and he had a daughter and he lost his daughter, and you know, he seems to be protecting her, and he knows sign language, and he had a daughter, and you know, he's this tragic figure. And so then there seems to be kind of a slight emotional arc.
I feel like we are expecting that, and we are projecting a lot of that. I feel like the actual film doesn't address it ultimately.
Well, what I feel like the actual film doesn't address in terms of this relationship is that Benicio del Toro, Alejandro, is a killer of children. You know, there is no, like, he is emotionally dead inside. He, like, you know, he
the guy at the climax of Sicario.
Yeah, killed 2 children and a mother before killing his enemy. You know, so he is incapable of caring for this child. He's emotionally devastated, and because of his trauma, and his grooming by Josh Brolin's character to become this Soldado. And but then, you know, you see after Isabel experiences this moment of profound violence, and just you see just the hope just drain from her eyes, and she's just so tremendously distant. And I think that, like, that is an emotionally hard place to be.
Brolin witnessing that too in the helicopter.
And how he catches a tear.
Yeah.
Over that
I don't know if it's a tear, but
I don't know. I thought I saw a
he has a
gleam of
wry
something.
smile. If I would say it.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think that her performance is exemplary because she does a lot with very little, and with a character who at her introduction could have seemed very shallow.
I was really nervous when she was introduced. I was like, oh, no, I don't want to do anything with this character.
I know. I thought it was going to turn into like Logan for a second, old man Logan.
She was never as annoying a character as I feared. But again, to talk about it in our bad, I don't think she ultimately amounted to much either.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for your good.
Yeah.
All right, B.
I also like Jeffrey Donovan in a mustache.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a really sweet mustache.
All right. B, any good from you?
Yeah, I mean, the good begins and ends with Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin. They're fascinating dudes to watch. I think, what I would say about the sequel is that it does a decent job of recapturing the futility of the situation. Maybe not as well as the first film, and there's a lot of repetition thematically going on with this movie. But, at the end, when Brolin is observing Isabella, I was like, yeah, nice try.
To me, they were trying to, shoehorn a message in there. But to me, everything felt very muted. The entire movie felt very emotionally muted. That's my bad.
Well, we're not there yet.
I know, I'm so sorry.
We're not there yet. But yeah, that's my good.
Damn. All right. For me, I guess I would have to echo everything that's already been stated regarding the good. We've already talked about Benicio's performance, Josh's performance, and Isabella Mourner's performance. I agree with Lisa. I found both viewings her character to be extremely intriguing because she isn't played how you would expect or how that character has been played in other movies. I also like what you mentioned, Brad, the directing of that ambush scene. I like how the end of the film. I think I like. It's hard to say. I'll like the end of the film if the next film is what I think it is, because the way the film ends, you could.
It's a spoiler. You talking about a spoiler?
I know, but I don't know that. I don't want to get into it because I'm not.
Because this is under the umbrella of good, and you don't want to bring it up because it's not good.
Well, let's just move on to the bad.
Well, hold on. There is. I also like. I like some stuff that the script is doing, but again, if the next movie isn't payoff for some of this stuff that.
Oh, you want a next movie?
I found interesting.
It's supposed to be a trilogy.
Oh yeah.
Well, they're saying it's going to be another movie. So.
All right.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. I guess that's it. Really, Benicio and Josh Brolin's performance and Isabella Mourner's performance. Yeah, like I said, I like Shea Wingham's nice little 5-second cameo, and yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. So now on to the bad, Brian.
Well, I kind of mentioned it a little bit before. I just think that I think the omission of Denis Villeneuve, Roger Deakins, and Johan Johansson, of course, who passed away. You could definitely see they're missing from this film, and those are the main reasons why I absolutely loved that first film. And you could just feel, and I think you put it perfectly, Lisa. Like, it just feels emotionally muted. Like, it just doesn't feel like I can get, even though I've lived with these characters, especially for Alejandro and Matt Graver from the first film, I just never really felt I had like that emotional connection to those characters.
Because there was no Emily Blunt. Like, Emily Blunt was like just this lightning rod in the first film for all of this stress, and we watched her processing all of this horror, and then we could feel through her. Mm-hmm. But like with Josh Brolin,
and sail through her,
but watching Josh Brolin and Benicio del Toro, they are so beyond humanity. Like they have become machines of vengeance, machines of like, this is my like war games. They're like, this is my objective. What can I do to get my objective? And I don't care about human lives. I do not feel, I'm not processing any guilt. Josh Brolin almost takes delight in going, oh, we're going to take some lives and fuck some shit up. Like, he seems to really enjoy that aspect of his job, the way some people enjoy, like, I don't know, doing a Sudoku.
Yeah, but was my next point. Was Emily Blunt's character, I think, is really missing from this, because she was the anchor of that first film that really we were experiencing that movie through her eyes and ears, her perception. And there's no character in this film for us to go through that journey with.
Well, that's the big problem I have with the second movie is the first film leaves you in such a depression. I mean, so low. Like, there is no hope. The kids in the soccer field, we've done nothing. Their lives continue into a miserable, violent, explosive existence, and everything, all your good intentions mean nothing. and there is no winning. There is no winning for Bolin, right? There is no winning for the American people.
No.
So when they reintroduce this world of nihilism and futility with the terrorism angle, and they try to underscore futility by saying like, oh yeah, you know what, this thing that started off this whole story the second time around, actually they're from New Jersey, it's not even our problem, we just got to get out of here, let's clean it all up, and for some reason let's kill Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And Taylor Sheridan, who wrote this script, he wrote the first film. He wrote, of course, Hell, High Water, Wind River. I mean, he's done, in my opinion, some great work. This just feels like, I don't know. It's just a lot of this feels like lazy writing to me.
This movie feels like, let me try it again.
Right.
And he said it all already.
Yeah. And I feel that way too. It just feels like they were just chasing what was done in the first film.
But like once you end, as Lisa was saying, in the first film, with Benicio revealing how low he's had to go to achieve vengeance, once you reveal that monster, you can't then go back to, I'm taking care of this kid.
Yeah, try to put that back in the box.
I know sign language. Although, as part of my good, I like that scene a lot when he starts suddenly signing.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
That scene's amazing.
Yeah.
I apologize for leaving it off of my good. That scene's great. And that whole moment, that's like a jewel in this film. But you can't go to that moment and then not acknowledge what happened at the end of Sicario.
At the end of the first movie. Yeah, no, you're right. So it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like two different people were directing. And Salima said that he didn't consult with Denis with the first film, which he doesn't necessarily have to, but it definitely doesn't feel like a direct sequel. It just feels like another chapter in this world, which could be seen as a good or a bad thing. But I don't know. The movie again, I've said this before, it doesn't feel focused. Like we focus on the terrorism aspect in like the first act of the film, and that really is the plot point that kicks this story off. But then, by the end of the film, that kind of gets lost to us, and then we're with Isabel, but that never seems to really go anywhere. And then, of course, what I loved about the first film is like how you have the subplot of the cop Silvio and his son, and you see how that arc happens and how that's connected.
And they try to recreate that.
And they try to recreate that, and it just
with a mall encounter.
Yeah, and it just feels tacked on. It feels sloppy. It doesn't feel as tight as the subplot in the first film was with that character of Silvio, because even with the corrupt cop Silvio who was transporting the drugs, like when you see how tragic his story is, you feel for that character. You feel for his son.
And it's all setting up the final shot of the film, the final gut punch of the movie.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of mystery to that character's entire arc, because every time they would cut back to this police officer and his son, you're like, well, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Whereas when you cut back to the Coyote story, you know exactly what's happening and how it's going to build.
Yeah.
Especially when the two meet in a parking lot accidentally.
Yeah, it just feels so contrived. I don't
the
know.
way that he looks at Benicio del Toro in the car is too hard.
Yeah.
He looks at him way too hard.
And way too long. They linger on that shot for way too long.
It's bizarre. Like, I was watching and I was like, does he already know that guy? Like, is this kid from the other movie somehow? Like, because he looks at with him with such, like, meaning. And we'll get to my turn. But this guy's, that kid's acting is bizarre. Is bizarre. Like, he's a very sweet-looking kid. He's a very sweet-looking kid, and he comes from this kind of interesting background because, he does have a passport, and he, clearly, he's been to the United States. He has a little bit more freedom than some of these other...
Well, he is from the United States.
Yeah. So he has a little bit more freedom than some of these other people, but we don't really see how he gets how he gets involved, aside from like fat rolls of cash, and fat rolls of cash are very persuasive.
Yeah, especially to like a 15-year-old kid
or a mom and her infant son.
But
or,
he walks around like a sea sponge, just looking at the situation and like barely reacting. Like, you know, he was a very non-character to me.
Yeah, it was very odd because you really can't get connected to, and that's what I wanted. I saw what they were doing, and like you were saying, they basically just rinse and repeat. You know, okay, let's just have this subplot, you know, that's parallel to our main story, and let's see how they're going to, you know, kind of meet head on. But to me, it just doesn't work, and I think part of it is just the way that it's written, how it's contrived, and the acting. I think that kid was bland. You're right. He was just way too bland.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, like it seems to be the direction was, is there any way you could do less? And there are some actors that are amazing at doing less. Benicio del Toro, he is like a fucking virtuoso of less. What he can do with nothing is astounding. Absolutely. But this kid's like less is just like, you know, like when you've just had a procedure at the dentist and you want to act cool walking out of the dentist office, like you just woke up.
Damn, Lisa.
You're just he's walking half
wasn't that
drowsy and half dazed through the film.
God damn.
I hope he never hears this episode.
I don't know.
You just killed that dude.
I'm so sorry. Maybe you should edit that out.
What was his name?
Elijah Rodriguez.
That's it. Okay, so he played Miguel.
He played Miguel.
Okay.
And, you know, there could be, but I mean, even, like, look at this picture.
Yeah, I know.
Like, look at this picture.
It looks
I
like
mean,
a poster to Love, Simon.
I don't know.
That was from the back office of
He looks like
he
looks like somebody from he looks like somebody. What's that boy band?
Menudo.
Menudo. Yeah.
He's got a bag.
Leave that dude alone. Leave Manuel alone.
But I honestly do think that it has something to do with the direction, where this is his third credit.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
You know, so like to me, like I'm not looking at that kid and going like that kid has no talent. I'm looking at that kid and going like somebody did not bring out whatever his thing is, because what he's done in the past is let's click on you, little guy. There he is.
Yeah, but they don't give him, or at least you don't give him that much.
He was
in this role.
He was a kid in Book of Life, and that's voice acting. Yeah. That takes a lot of expression. I did not see Book of Life, and then he was in another film, We Die Young. It was a 2018 film.
It's not out yet.
Not out yet. Yeah. So, but you know, so like I don't think that this is any kind of indication of this little sweetie's talent. To me, I think it has to do with the direction, because everybody is tamped down.
The whole movie comes down to this kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the moment when he pulls the trigger on Del Toro, and then the way he reacts to that in the back of the truck, and how he jumps out, and then 1 year later he's tatted up, and you know, he wants to be Sicario.
I think
it just fails.
Yeah, this is my last point. I guess with the third act and that whole thing, I know we talked about this before, as far as like Benicio and him getting shot and presumably dead. But of course he doesn't. He gets shot in the mouth, which, watching the film when I first saw it and I saw the gunshot when he shot him, I was like, that looks kind of low.
Yeah, I know. It does look like it does show like, oh, that's gone through his face. But
so I guess they set it up, but to me, that's my problem with the script, is why even put your character in that situation?
The moment that happens, right? The moment you bring Del Toro, who's this boogeyman, assassin, nightmare figure, and you wrap him up, and he's failed, right? He has failed. Like his death is occurring. Mm. The moment you trap him like that and then put a bullet through his face, I need a whole nother movie for him to reconcile with that moment. And you know, you're saying we're going to get a sequel. The sequel's not going to do that. You know it's not, because what's happened at the end of this movie is everything he's been doing, his mission of revenge, his mission to wipe out the people that have killed is amounted to him getting shot in the face by a child. But guess what? Don't worry. It went through his cheek. He's fine. He's a little gross looking. 1 year later, hey kid, I know you're the one. Somehow I know you're the one that shot me.
Oh yeah, because he's got a fucking bag over his head.
Yeah. I know you're the one that
And he shot all of the other witnesses.
Right. I know you're the one who shot me. You want to come into my line of work, dude? like what?
But that's the thing I talked to Darren about. I'm sure when you talk about it, we'll probably talk more about it. But does he take him to train him?
Well, we
or
don't.
Is he,
we don't.
We
don't
don't know.
We don't know.
Did he kill him?
You can't say no to that face.
The movie ends with him going, "Do you want to be a Sicario?"
Well,
and the kid going, "Oh, Godfather door's closing on me." Yep.
This could be the consequences of him wanting to be a Sicario. Like, you're gonna get killed.
But
he seemed like after he shot the guy in the face, he didn't really want to be a Sicario.
No, if there's a third film, the third film's going to open up, and Del Toro and this kid are going across the desert killing cartel guys.
I don't. I mean, that would be cool. That would be.
No, it would not be cool. It'd be stupid.
No, yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It was. Yeah, I wouldn't want to see that. Not especially with the world that they've set up. I don't want to see it.
So, what do you think? You think that door closes and he strangles him? He throws him in the fryer? Like what?
This is what he says when he closes the door. We have to talk about your future. He didn't say what I said last night. What I told you. He said.
Okay.
He said.
Oh, that's right.
He said we have to. First, he asked him, "So you want to be a Sicario?" Yeah. The kid nods yes. Then he closes the door. Says, "Okay, we have to talk about your future."
Yeah, he's grooming him.
Yeah. So,
or maybe he could just be like, "You have no future."
No. I think he's grooming him because I think he's still because Carlos Reyes is still alive.
Yeah.
At the end of this film, so my assumption, and this is why I said I have to see the next film to discern if this is a good point. If the next film is Carlos and this film should not live or die by what happens in the next film.
Yeah.
That's one of my bad. But if in the next film, Benicio is grooming this kid because he's still on that mission and he's going to use this kid to get to Carlos Reyes. I don't know what that movie is yet.
That kid has a connection to the Reyes cartel, the Reyes.
I
works
guess
for them.
That's right. I guess he still does because when he jumps out, that entire truck gets killed.
Yeah.
And so they don't know about him wimping out.
Right.
Afterwards.
So he uses that kid to get to Reyes. And then with the way that Isabella was looking at Matt Graver and that helicopter ride, she was murdering that dude with her eyes. And so what I think is that she is going to hire either Benicio or that kid to kill Matt Graves in the third movie.
I don't think she was murdering anything with her eyes. I think she was a shell of a person. That's how I interpreted it.
But she was looking at him. There was anger in her eyes.
I didn't see the anger. I saw
nothing.
Glass. Yeah, I saw glass. Yeah.
I saw glass.
Yeah. Well, I don't want a Sicario 3. I can tell you that much right now.
Well, it's coming.
Yeah. I don't know if it is. Lisa.
Yes.
Oh, damn. That was all Brian's bad?
That was all Brian's bad.
Oh, can
I tossed in a couple of my bad with Brian. To me, like, I just felt what was, like, bad for me is, like, we spent a lot of time with people that I felt no empathy for, especially with the opening scenes, with, like, the migrants being led by the coyote, like, into the United States. I felt a tremendous amount of empathy for them, and I felt a lot for them. Those people, like, the victims of the suicide bombers, and even the suicide bombers themselves. I feel this tremendous amount of empathy for them because they would not be doing this kind of thing if they weren't, like, brainwashed and powerless. So, like, I feel all of this tremendous sorrow in these scenes. And then you spend so much time with Josh Brolin, who is a monster and a bastard. And I don't want to know what he's up to. Watching him in the scene with that guy,
the African guy,
who had been you know, who had been he was involved with like jumping ships,
Somalia.
stealing
He's a pirate,
tankers, and but like, you know, seeing Josh Brolin just, you know, blow up at his house and destroy his family, and I understand that, you know, maybe that is how negotiations go. Like, and I don't know if this could even technically be a bad, but for me, I don't want to watch that. I just don't want to watch that.
You did not want me to take you to Sicario 2.
I did not want to see Sicario 2. Like
Sicario 1 really bothered you.
Sicario, because, I mean, the point of the Sicario films is like, you know, this is what the government is up to. This is the kind of darkness that goes on in order to deal with great evil, like the great evil of terrorism or the great evil of cartels, is you yourself have to be a kingpin. You yourself have to be a terrorist. And I like, that's just not part of my worldview. I know that that's part of the world, the way the world operates. But when I watch shit like that, I just have to emotionally shut down because I can't deal. You know, I can't deal with that.
It's hard shit that some people just can't, don't find any entertainment value.
There's no entertainment value.
You can't be blamed for that.
But then the contrast of Sicario to a Sicario 2, where Sicario 1, like, they had those scenes, and then it was extremely devastating, but it was also extremely compelling watching Emily Blunt be unraveled. But, like, to me, like, you know, like, there were these scenes that were devastating and challenging, but then also it was interspersed with shit that was just boring. So boring.
And then those devastating scenes never ultimately amounted to anything.
No.
So if there was some type of
payoff
or catharsis for it, then maybe.
I thought that it was rude, you know, to like have these people who are struggling to get into the United States, you know, like, and then to just leave that story lying dead. That's rude. Like, it's inconsiderate. It's inconsiderate. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to spend any time with Josh Brolin. Fuck that guy.
All right, B.
I feel like I've voiced a lot. The final thing I would say is the first film was this marriage of performers, writer, and telling a very angry, frustrated screenplay, succinct screenplay that just leaves his characters lower than they thought they could possibly go, married to cinematic masters, Denis Villeneuve's direction and Roger Deakins' cinematography, and Johansson's score. Now, Salim is not a bad director, and Dariusz Wolski, who's Ridley Scott's guy who shot this film, you know, he shot The Martian, he shot Crimson Tide, he shot, you know, like all these gorgeous looking Ridley Scott movies. Yeah. He doesn't make an ugly movie.
Not at all. No. But he's no Roger Deakins.
But he's no Roger Deakins. Salim is no Villeneuve. No. And the marriage that is happening here is not artful. No. And is ultimately also hindered by the most movie-ish screenplay by Sheridan. And it's such a disappointment for what you're saying, Brian. Yeah. You know, Hell or High Water, love it. Sicario, love it. Wind River, I have my issues with that. But compared to this, Wind River is a masterpiece.
Damn!
I haven't seen Wind River yet.
You should check it out. It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix, yeah. It's in my queue.
This is Hollywood garbage. Yeah, I found this movie really, really frustrating. I was never bored.
No, same.
But
same.
honestly, the moment, the height of the film to me was the sign language scene, the relationship with this rancher. Although, like, I did not appreciate how the story got wrapped up with Isabella and the rancher and him in that moment. Like, I felt like, you know, Isabella later says, like, how do you know sign language? And he just says exactly what he said to the rancher. I thought, you could handle that a lot differently. But the moment everything ends for Del Toro and he's struggling in the back of the car and he's going to be killed, the moment you kill him, okay, shit, I didn't want you to do that because I'm invested in what was happening with this character, but now you've killed him. I am shocked. I did not expect that to happen. Then you cut back to his body. The moment they cut back to his body, you're just like, okay, what?
Yeah.
And, it's gross. And you're just like, oh, well, this is great motivation for the third movie, maybe? But then you cut to 1 year later, and he doesn't seem at all affected.
He has a little scar.
Yeah, he's got a tiny little scar. But he's back to being in suits. Do you want to be Sicario? Let me groom you. And it's just such a movie nonsense. And the first Sicario didn't feel like movie nonsense. The first Sicario, to me, while it left me devastated, maybe not as devastated as it left Lisa, it also left me exhilarated as like, that's what a goddamn movie can do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's why I didn't want to see a sequel. I didn't want this.
Yeah, same.
It just seems like every movie is getting a sequel now. I heard them talking about like Baby Driver getting a sequel. Like, hasn't he gone straight? Wasn't that the end of the movie? Like, what's the sequel going to be?
Edgar Wright said it himself.
Seems like a terrible idea, Edgar Wright.
All right, so I'll forego my bad so we can hop into the ugly because we're already pushing an hour and 40 minutes. Brian, let's start with you. Ugly.
Yeah, I always have trouble with ugly. I guess, just kind of speaking about what we've talked about this whole world. This whole world is ugly. You look at the characters that inhabit this world. The corruption of the governments, dealing with the terrorism and the cartels, and like everything. Like just even with Matthew Modine's character and him being the Secretary of Defense, and him approving this mission to basically kidnap this girl. Basically, you're seeing like how, I'm not sure if this is how our government operates. I wouldn't be surprised if it is how our government operates. But, basically going by any means necessary to do stuff that has to get done. But, just getting a peek behind the curtain to see stuff like that, it's just kind of ugly to see how our governments and everything operates. So
news cycle action, right? That's what so much of the first one was about too. Is we're gonna do this because it's on the news and we got to show the American people that we're doing something. Oh shit, something else happens. Well, we gotta move our attention over to that. And they tried to repeat that idea here.
Yeah. Something I did find interesting, and I'll talk about it now, even though this is the ugly segment of it. It's interesting how this movie is very topical now, dealing, especially what we hear about the news with immigrants and the borders and families being.
This movie it starts out being topical, but then it forgets all of that.
Well,
shit.
no, it does, but I'm just saying, just the idea of dealing with immigrants crossing the border and what we're seeing in the news now with these families being torn apart. Again, like movies are made in the vacuum. Like there's no real agenda. Like they didn't make this movie to talk about what's going on in the news now.
Well, I think Sheridan certainly has a message. I think he does have an agenda.
Does, but
he might not necessarily be speaking to the immigrant separation.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like he's not. It's not like a direct response to like what's going on in the news with Trump and the immigration laws and stuff like that.
But it is a response to the hell that existence has been for decades.
Exactly. So I just find it topical that this movie actually comes out around the time that all this stuff is kind of happening in the news with our own country and what's going on.
But technically, it's not the exact same thing because the families that are separated were families seeking legal asylum,
Don't
not
worry,
crossing.
It'll still be
border.
topical in 10 years.
Yeah.
In 20 years.
Yeah. So I just found that to be kind of interesting. But that's probably my ugly that I had.
All right, Lisa, you're ugly.
I have a couple of uglies. First is the gross waste of Catherine Keener. Mm-hmm. She's such an amazing actress, and I'm sure a lot of the time she's like, I can't believe I got my hair flat ironed for this. Also, when he gets up, he's got all of the blood, and then he had sand in his hair, and then the sand plooped from his hair, and I was like, oh my god, is that brains? And that was an ugly second, but it wasn't brains, it was just sand. So I guess that's number 2. While I was watching this film, so today Brad gave Darren a book about Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And actually, technically, Ben gave.
Oh, Ben did. It through Brad.
Yeah.
And Brad and I were flipping through that book, and I was just picking random quotes to read to Brad that I just found interesting. And one of the things that Bruce Lee was talking about was you know, he's like, I'm against violence in movies. Like, you know, I don't think that violence should ever be the subject of movies. What I do, what Bruce Lee says he does, is not violence, it's action. Because, you know, when he's going to, like, defeat a foe, like, he's doing it creatively. He's doing it artfully. He's thinking about the visual presentation. Like, if he were to engage with someone violently, he would just rip their throat out. He wouldn't do with all of the, like, fantastical elements. He adds the martial arts movie flair. You know, he would just, you know, destroy somebody. And to me, like, this movie portrays violence versus portraying action. When people are killed, it's done in a very succinct and cold way. And that's very ugly. You know, that kind of killing is very ugly. But it's also not artful. You know, and it's also not entertaining. So, and it's also, I find it, like, I'm a person where I, like, to me, like, unless the action is above and beyond, I don't find action extraordinarily entertaining. But I don't find violence entertaining at all. Yeah. And, like, when I read Brad that quote, Brad's like, that's bullshit. I don't agree with that at all.
I mean, I don't, because I love violent movies. And I look at Sicario, and I think Sicario does violence. And Sicario 2 attempts to do the violence in an artful way, but fails.
It just fails. Yeah, it's very boring.
All right. B, you're ugly.
Its existence.
All right.
Sicario 2. I didn't want it. Now I got it. I wish I didn't have it. Nice thing is, I never have to watch it again.
There you go.
All right. My ugly is Catherine Keener's wardrobe.
Oh, yeah, rude.
They were in Texas somewhere, and she had on this huge oversized overcoat that was not flattering on her. And I love Catherine Keener.
Yeah.
I needed her to be dressed with some consideration, like and some attention to detail, because it was not flattering to her, and it was distracting.
Maybe she runs cold though. Like, you know, it's June. It's like 100 degrees outside, and I'm wearing a sweatshirt.
And I'm thinking, like, okay, maybe because they're in Texas somewhere, they're in this hangar facility. Maybe because it's hot there, they got the AC pumping in there, so it's cold. So maybe she puts on this coat. But still, it's like 2 sizes too big, it looks like. So.
Yeah, no, they really seem to be trying to bland her up. But we know what she is.
Yeah,
She's amazing.
I'm not feeling that.
Can you tell me why she wants to kill Del Toro?
Because
loose ends.
Well, because he has information that this operation was government mandated. It was spearheaded by the government.
But she wouldn't kill Brolin because he is government.
Right. So Benicio del Toro is basically just freelance. He's a contractor. He's a tool. He's an actual hitman.
He's a loose cannon.
And that's why Josh Brolin always says, I got a guy. So he's not going to go call up another squad member. He's going to go call this third party and hire him. And because he's a third party privy to this government operation, he has to be killed if shit goes tits up.
Do you think that Josh Brolin's character has, like, real love for Alejandro? Or do you think...
I was thinking, well, actually, I was thinking about this, was it last night or today? So I guess it was today, because I'm looking at his face when Benicio dies, and I'm just looking at his face on the ride home. So after Benicio gets killed, he says, fuck it, let's just clean it all. He's obviously affected. And I'm thinking, like, okay, I'm looking at all the previous examples in the movie where he's showing as to be someone who is emotionless, or, like you say, all about the mission and cold and calculated. He can kill that guy's, he can order the airstrike on that prisoner's house, on his family, or what have you. So I'm thinking about, okay, he's pretty ruthless. So does he actually genuinely care that Benicio gets killed? But then I thought about it. The fact that he's been on a bunch of missions with Benicio, he's used him. He's been in life or death. And this, for me, is just me projecting my own experience with the military. So he's been in a bunch of life or death situations with another person. Now, what happens when you go through that? There is a type of inherent bond or connection. You survive something traumatic.
The difference is he created him. He manipulated him into the being that he is.
Right.
And I see it as, I think it is a form of affection in the way that Brolin character can have affection for anything. That it's the loss of something that he created, and it's not quite the loss of a child, but it is a loss of his talent.
It could very well be that, but I just took it as, well, for me it added a complexity to that character that he isn't all just, I don't care about anything except blowing shit up and killing people. For me it adds a layer, just like Benicio, the fact that he can be someone who can cold-bloodedly murder a family if it means it gets him closer to revenge, but then also can show some type of empathy or sympathy for this little girl. So there's a duality or a gray area. So for me, I just attributed it to them trying to seem like, okay, well, he can care about something.
I see Graver as a manager of a store, a retail mega chain, right? And dude, if the company would just let me run this store would rock. I'd make all the money on my own. But you keep coming at me with conversion rates and membership programs, and you're getting in the way of me doing my job. And that's him.
Yeah.
Were you Graver?
Angsty retail manager.
I've known a lot of Gravers.
Okay.
I've known a lot of Gravers.
All right.
Yes, I was.
So yeah, I'll just leave it at that as far as my ugly for the film. The violence in it is ugly. When Benicio died, my face.
I thought of you immediately.
Yeah. I said, "Fuck this movie! Fuck this movie!"
I think the movie would have been better if he was dead.
I think the movie would be better if he was dead. Still not good.
Still not good.
So here's the thing: he dies, right? And I'm like, what? And then they cut back to that shot like you were talking about, Brad. And as the part of me, my right mind knows that, okay, if he's alive, then that's just a fucking jip. Like, that's a cop out if he's still alive. But like the Benicio fan in me was like, please Twitch, please not be dead. And when he moved, I was like, yes. But I see that death, and thinking about it, I see that death not necessarily about that character. And why would you have that happen to him if you're just going to bring him back? Like, that's dumb. I see that more regarding the kid and that happening, and Benicio saying, oh shit, well, if he's willing to do that, then he might have what it takes to be a freaking hitman. So that, for me, seems like it.
But
just, it
he only did
his...
it because the kid before him who didn't do it got shot in the face.
Right, but he's easily influenced. He's easily manipulated.
I don't know. I would hope that I would not be easily influenced, but I would find the kid before me being shot in the face very persuasive.
Like, okay, so they just shot Brian in the face. I guess I gotta shoot this guy because I don't want to get shot like Brian got in the face.
So
I
don't
can't
know.
be that great anyway.
So if you've seen Sicario, hit us up on social media and let us know what you thought about the film at ItModcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Brian, you are looking forward to Ant-Man and the Wasp this week?
Yeah, man. Marvel's next installment in the MCU. Last movie we get from the MCU this year until Captain Marvel next March. So I'm looking forward. I'm looking to see how it ties into Infinity War and how it's going to move the story forward going into Avengers 4. So excited for that one.
All right, you can find that guy if you're looking for him at the Turtle Dork on Twitter, at the Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. Wife Dork.
Yes.
What are you looking forward to this week besides Evangeline Lilly flying around as the Wasp with blasters?
It's going to be awesome. Monday, Brad and I are going back to the Alamo. They're doing a movie party of Jaws for the 4th of July. So that's going to be amazing.
You said on Monday or on the 4th?
No,
on Monday.
Monday, July 2nd.
All 4 movies?
No. Just the first one.
Too many numbers.
That would be so great, though.
That would be great. Brad and I are looking forward to watching Sorry to Bother You for the first time because we haven't gotten to see it yet. And, of course, Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's going to be amazing.
She is at Sidewalk Siren and at Bake Dork on Twitter and Instagram. She's also at Sidewalk Siren on Letterboxd. Mouth Dork.
Yes, sir.
What are you looking forward to besides Rocky IV?
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Jaws. I'm looking forward to Ant-Man. I'm looking forward to Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to reading more Harlan Ellison. I've pulled down my entire shelf. I've got his comics out. I've got his short story collections out. I took down A Boy and His Dog, the Blu-ray. I wrote, I didn't say this in my Week in Dork, but I did write a tribute to Ellison for Diabolique magazine. I just like to point people to that. It's the first time I've ever written anything. And as I was reading it to Lisa before I submitted it to the editor, I was crying to my own words.
Yeah. It's an amazing. I mean, I should have said that.
No.
Like it's an amazing. It's some of Brad's best writing, and it comes from a really true place.
I've written a lot of tributes to people. I've written about Adam West and Curtis Hanson and Darwin Cook and like people who've had a lot of effect on me. But I've never written a tribute that I was totally affected by in the process and in the result and just in visiting his work again. While I was writing it, I had to stop at one point to read The Deathbird so I could continue on with my thoughts.
Yeah.
Because the last time I had read The Deathbird was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, do I still feel about this story the way I did then? And of course not. You feel differently because I'm now 38 and I was 18 then. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to more Ellison. And I've got another article about A Boy and His Dog that will be dropping somewhere. I can't say yet.
All right.
We'll see.
That guy is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. I am looking forward to the first Purge that's supposed to come out.
Oh, dude, is that this Wednesday?
It's coming out on Wednesday because obviously the 4th. Actually, it's coming out on Tuesday because Wednesday's the 4th.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that Tuesday. I'm looking forward to seeing Rocky IV on the 4th at the Alamo Draft House. It's been a while since I've seen that movie.
What time is that?
7, I think, or 7:40.
Lame.
So I think class is suspended for the 4th, hopefully, so that way I don't have to have any issues with that. So, but yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. And I'm also looking forward to seeing Ant-Man and the Wasp. Sia and I have gotten our tickets. I've actually that was my first purchase for my A-list club, for AMC A-list club. Bought both of our tickets, IMAX Real 3D.
Keir Dullea is going to be at the AFI Silver for 2001: A Space Odyssey.
When?
Thursday.
Shit.
I know.
What time?
I think 7 o'clock.
Damn it.
Yeah.
See, we might have to go see Ant-Man on Friday. Crap.
Yeah.
70 millimeter?
Yeah, 70 millimeter. It's the new Christopher Nolan restoration. I've heard nothing but phenomenal things about it. Now, Darren, only Keir Dullea will be there on Thursday. They are showing 2001 for the next 2 weeks in 70 millimeter.
Oh, that's different. Okay,
Yeah.
so all right, that's what I'm doing Saturday then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that guy, this guy, me guy, can be found at the Turtle Dork, not
No.
the Turtle Dork. I can be found at the Disco Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd. I'm not on Untapped, unfortunately. Thank you all for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. At the end of the week, we have a fistful of Tiny.
Yeah, a fistful of Tiny.
Yeah.
And Darren,
Yeah.
we know what we should have talked about in our Week in Dork.
Yeah.
Is we had an amazing interview.
I was going to drop that on Wednesday, out of nowhere. So yeah, here's a little stinger input for you guys. Brad and I, we had a conversation with Larry Cohen. What? Like a conversation with Larry Cohen? We talked movies and stuff?
Oh my God.
And I recorded it?
Yep.
And you're going to get to hear it?
Here's a taste. Yeah. We asked Larry Cohen towards the end of the conversation what his favorite movie that does not get enough attention is. Yeah. And he answers that. Yeah. And it's a movie I've never seen.
Ooh, I'm curious.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. That's dropping Wednesday. Keep you all until the fistful comes out on Friday. So enjoy the rest of your week. Go watch some movies. Check out The Purge. Check out Sorry to Bother You. Please check that movie out when it comes out Friday. Yes, go see Ant-Man and Wasp and have a nice palate cleanser post Infinity War.
Go see the Whitney documentary. You know you're curious.
Whitney Houston?
Yeah, that documentary drops on the 6th.
Oh, okay. Check that out too. But please, Sorry to Bother You, so that when we talk about it, you can be a part of that conversation as it happens instead of having to wait and come back. So yeah, it's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Didn't ever think this was going to get recorded, but until next time.